it's kind of interesting to end a technology conference talking about alligators. But what I do is I help leaders, and we are all leaders in one way or the other, whether we're leading our businesses, whether we're leading our departments, whether we're leading our families, our communities, our religious institutions. We're all leaders in one way or the other. And what I do is I help leaders that are stuck in the proverbial alligator pit. What's an alligator pit? An alligator pit is when you have so many things on your to-do list that you just can't even get through all of them and they're falling through the cracks and you're going nuts. An alligator pit is when you've got this great project going and you just can't get buy-in. And even worse, when people are actually not doing anything. An alligator pit is when you have this financial plan that's going up and for the last 3 years it's been flat. Does anybody ever feel like sometimes they're in an alligator pit? Well, it's not surprising because we have so many responsibilities, expectations, and frustrations constantly snapping at us that it's really, really easy just to get overwhelmed. What we're going to talk about today is getting out of the alligator pit, staying out of the alligator pit, and moving on. I'd like to introduce you to Chris. Now, Chris was stuck in an alligator pit. When I first started working with her, she had just gotten this great executive job at a nonprofit. Before, she had been working in the same company, but she'd had a small group of people that were already part of the group, and she was leading them on projects. Now, her job was completely different. She was an executive. She was going out. She was meeting people. She was networking. She was bringing in sponsors. She was bringing in members. But it sounded like fun at first. But once she started getting out there, she realized that she just hated it. She would have to go places where she didn't meet anybody. She'd have to go to events where she was just feeling uncomfortable. She'd have to leave her family at home. She told me that she would just be driving there sweating with her hands clutched to the steering wheel thinking, oh my gosh, maybe did I leave the dog out? Did I leave the door open? Cat right in front of me, I better go back. So if she actually finally made it to the place, then she'd walk in the door and she'd freeze. It would be like, oh my gosh, all these people, I don't know anyone. She'd want to try to blend in with the wallpaper. She'd look real interested in a picture or something. And she just felt so awkward. And then she'd have to actually try to sell herself. She felt she was being sales. And she was just miserable. And it was perfectly understandable because her core thought was so negative. She was thinking, oh my gosh, this is so fakey. I'm so miserable. I'm going to go hide behind the potted plant. She needed to change that core thought. She needed to have a thought that was more positive so she could more enjoy herself and so she could actually do her job and get people to meet with her and sign up and be members and sponsors. So the question is, how do you do that? How do you change that core thought? Well, what we did was we worked together and we found what her value was. What was her value in this situation? Well, it turned out that she was amazing at knowing the resources in town. She was able to tell people exactly where they could find to answer their questions. And then if she couldn't help them right there on the spot, then she could invite them to come meet with her and find out more about the resources she had available at her nonprofit. Then she felt a whole lot more comfortable because she had something that she was concentrating on. The second thing that we talked about was we looked at her strengths. What strengths did she have in the past situations? When did she go out networking and was really, really successful? And she was telling me about this time on a St. Patrick's Day event where they had these really funny centerpieces. And she was making jokes about them, and she had the whole table in stitches. Well, she made 2 really great contacts that day. Anybody have any idea what her strength was that she wasn't using? Now, her sense of humor. She had a great sense of humor. So we came up with a couple of stories that she could tell when she first started talking to somebody that was kind of funny, and she started feeling more comfortable. Then we set goals for her. We agreed that she was going to go out twice a week. She was going to talk to 2 people that she didn't know at all and approach them, and she was going to try to walk out with at least 2 appointments. And every week I'd hold her accountable to that. She started really enjoying herself when she started going out. She started meeting people. She started setting up appointments. She started making friends with people. They give her referrals. And all of a sudden, she started having appointments and getting sponsors and getting members. Her boss, who had brought me in the first place, was thrilled, and she even got a raise. So the moral is, to get out of the pit, you need to shift to positive thinking. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to take just a moment to pair up and to talk to each other about some alligator pit that you're in. And I want you to think about what value you bring to the situation, that your past strengths, and your goals, and see if you can get yourself out of that pit. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes for one person and 2 minutes for the other person. Some alligator pit you're in. You guys have an alligator pit back there? Okay, good. Okay, if you haven't switched yet, go ahead and switch. The other person gets to talk. Okay, now stop. Anybody want to share their alligator pit? Ray?
Okay, I want to improve my golf game.
Okay.
And I work at it like a fanatic. And I go out and I practice and I practice and I practice. And I can't carry it over to the game.
Okay.
I can get better practicing.
Well, you've really got to think about your value, about what you bring to that game, and concentrate on that. And you've got to think about your past strengths when you have been successful, and then setting goals on getting there. And being that you're from Florida, you really have a problem with alligator pits, I bet.
Anybody else like to share their alligator pits?
Sure. So the alligator pit that I think I'm in, it really has to do with my kids. So my kids play sports. We have a group of parents who no longer are getting along. Mm-hmm. You know, it's impacting the kids. But I haven't thought through what the action items are or what the solution is, but it's a pit. That we're in.
Yeah, well, look at the value, what your value and your past experiences have been, and look to the past, and look to your. I kind of think of the value as being more things that you know about and research you can do, and your education. While looking at the past, as you can look at your past strengths. What have you done in the past that you really have used your strengths, and then when you're going to the future, how can you set some goals here where, how I'm going to make this right by this time. What do I have to do in order to talk to what people, to talk to what officials or whatever to get to that point. But if you clarify your plan of action and what you add to the situation, then you can get there much easier and more likely. So thank you both for sharing. Thank you. So hopefully that gives you some ideas to get out of the alligator pit. So next, let's talk about staying out of the alligator pit. And staying out of the alligator pit is all about interacting for win-win. But let me tell you about Jeff. Jeff is a great guy, and he is so busy. He is the president of a wealth management company. He's the CEO of a co-working space. Both of them are growing. He's going nuts. He's got more and more people. The place is growing. So he came to me because he wanted help to figure out how to interact with all these people in a caring way and in a way that would add to his culture and grow the companies in a good direction. So we did some assessments, and what kind of came out was that he had some conflict in energy, but he also had a lot of compromise energy. And we think of compromise energy as being wonderful. Oh, yes, great. We're going to compromise. We're going to compromise, especially in the corporate world. But the fact is that compromise is really about giving up something. Both of the people are having to give up something. So as a leader, if you can instead look for the win-win, and to do this as a leader, you need to find out what the other person's win is. And once you know what the other person's win is, then you can frame your own win around that so both of you can win. And when you both win, as opposed to compromising, when you both win, that leads to higher intuition, and it leads to genius, it leads to wonderful opportunities that really open up and change things. So what we started on was, first we talked about that you have to be curious about the other person. People really want to care. Deep down inside, they want to be cared about. They want to be cared about, they want to be developed, they want to have a chance to show what they know, they want to be part of something larger than themselves, they want to be cared about. And by being curious about other people, asking them, what do you feel about this? What do you want to do with your life? What are your thoughts around this? These ways of opening up people and actually being curious about them completely change the interaction. One of the ways we really worked on was asking open-ended questions. When you ask open-ended questions instead of yes/no questions, do you like your job? Yes or no. You ask an open-ended question. What do you love about your job? What really turns you on about this job? Suddenly, it opens up all sorts of opportunities. So asking open questions is really important. Another thing we talked about was intuitive listening. There's three types of listening. One type of listening is subjective listening. I don't know if I really am very interested. Oh, yes, you are interested. Yes, let me tell you all the reasons why you're interested. That's subjective. Objective is a lot better. It's like, I don't know if I'm really interested in that. Well, I can tell that, you're not interested. What can I do to change it? What do you want? What do you need? What can I do to make this work for you? But then there's another kind of listening, which is intuitive. This is really paying attention to how the person is reacting to you. This is paying attention to the tone of their voice, paying attention to their physicality, and really listening to them. And this is the kind of listening that really opens people up. I'm not sure if I'm interested in that. I can tell that something's bothering you. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What are your thoughts around that? What are the opportunities that might come out of this? And by doing that, it completely changes things. And so with Jeff, suddenly he started using these listening, curiosity, and open-ended questions, and he started really connecting to people. He told me that he had a guy, he was really having a problem. He was having a problem with one of his financial planners. That he didn't really believe in the software Jeff had picked. And he was like causing trouble. He was telling people that, it was stupid, and his clients, and blah, blah, blah. He finally had to bring him in to talk to him directly. And, normally he would have either, fussed at him or either tried to come up with some kind of solution that they could both agree on. Instead, he said, no, I'm going to try to make this a win-win situation. I'm going to listen to what, Carrie and I have been talking about, and I'm going to do win-win. So he brought the guy in. He said, listen, what's bothering you? What are the opportunities here? What about the software do you like? What can we do here? And the guy was rah, 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 rah. What are the opportunities? Rah, 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 rah. What's bothering you? Rah, 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 rah. But by the end of the conversation, the guy felt listened to. He felt appreciated. Jeff actually got some ideas about how to make the software better. And now the guy, instead of coming into meetings like a cloud, a gray cloud, now he's like part of the team, and he's doing much better with his clients, and he's not yapping behind Jeff's back. And it really has changed the whole dynamics of the company. So to connect for win-win, you've got to interact differently. Now, I would once again like to get us talking, and I want you to practice this curiosity, open-ended questions, and intuitive listening. And I want you to ask each other, what do you love most about what you do, and why do you say that? And if you want to ask some other open-ended questions, that's fine too. Okay? The whole point is to open up the conversation by asking open-ended questions, by being interested in the other person as a person instead of this real surface stuff, which is, has its own thing. But if you want to interact with people in a deeper way and to influence them, having that connection is really important. Okay, now we're going to move on to, we've talked about Chris getting out of the pit. We've talked about Jeff moving on from the, staying out of the pit. And now we're going to talk about moving on from the pit. And the secret sauce to moving on from the pit is clarifying your why. The clearer you can be about why you're doing what you're doing, the more people will be interested in the what of what you're doing and want to follow along and help you. So one way that you can do this is by spreading those whys out and asking why you feel passionate about what you're doing, why you feel it's unique, and why you feel like it's going to be an impact. There's going to be an impact. And Dave is a great example of this. When I first started working with Dave, he had this dream of this large community center where there'd be businesses, there'd be a coffee shop, there'd be a co-working space, and all of these wonderful features. He had recently retired, had a long-term corporate job, and he was, and this was like his big thing on his own now in a kind of a different area. His problem was that he did have a founding team, but he needed a lot more people involved. He needed to have partners, he needed to have helpers, he needed volunteers, just needed a lot of help to get this off the ground. His problem was that he was very stuck in that corporate control type leadership where you tell someone to do it, and do they do it? Well, this didn't work real well in this environment that he was in. So he brought me in to try to help him be more engaged and more an insightful leader so that he could get people on board and onto this wonderful vision he had of this community center. So the first thing we talked about was his passion. Why are you so passionate about this? And he said that he was passionate about it because he had noticed that in his community that there was all these seemingly very successful people, particularly millennials, that were very, very lonely, that they had these full lives, but yet they had a sense of loneliness, and they really weren't attracted to formal religion. So he had a calling to try to find a way to connect these people so that they would be connected to each other as well as the community. And this was really the passion that he had going forward for this community. The second thing we talked about was how it was unique. He had come up with this great app. He was developing it with a partner that would actually connect the people in the community center with partners in the nonprofit that had real-time opportunities, volunteer opportunities. And so someone could be at the community center and then go straight over to the nonprofit and go help. He even had the idea of having something in the front that would go around, a sign in the front that would say the volunteer opportunities. He felt like this was what was really unique, this social good aspect, the social innovation aspect of it. And the third thing we talked about was the impact. He felt that it would bring not only people together, but it would bring the community together. And people would have a place to hang out, to do social activities, to do social good. The businesses would thrive. And then this would even maybe go on to have other community centers, and he would even have more people connecting with each other. And he was really excited about this. Well, once he clarified why he was passionate, why it was unique, and why it was going to have an impact, all of a sudden when he went to meetings, when he went to events, he would shine. He would be, Solimar promotes joy, personal growth, and social good. And people would be attracted to him. They'd say, well, what's this all about? How can I help? And so he was really able to embrace his visionary style, and he was able to move the community project further. And now it's right on schedule to be completed at some point, 2 or 3 years. It's going to take a while, but he's right there on schedule. So if you want to move on from the pit, clarify your whys. Now we're going to have one more breakout, and I want you to clarify your whys. And we talked a little bit about some of the conversation from last time you might be able to use again. But why are you passionate about whatever you're doing? It can be any project that you're on. Why is it unique, and why do you think it's going to have an impact? what I feel passionate about is I feel passionate about helping leaders be more effective, happy, and fulfilled. What my uniqueness is I have a framework that helps them interact and connect better. And then finally, I feel like my impact is that I'm changing things from the top down, the culture from the top down. I used to try to change the culture from the bottom up, and it's just a lot easier doing it from the top down. So hopefully this gives you like some ideas about how to really, when you focus on these important things, then you get that clearer thing and you'll be able to move forward and people will follow you. So we've talked about getting out of the pit by positive core thinking. We've talked about staying out of the pit by interacting for true win-win. And then finally, how to move on from the pit by clarifying your whys. If you take all this and you use it, then you will honestly be able to say, "See you later, alligator." Thank you.